We finish off our discussion with you, the viewers, about the Ice Age, global warming, and deep time. This is Genesis Week. And a welcome to this episode of Genesis Week, the weekly program of creationary commentary on news, views, and events pertaining to the Origins controversy, made possible by you, the supporters of CORE Ottawa, Citizens for Origins Research and Education. We provide some of the best pirate broadcasting anywhere. We set up our underground studios this week in the Blue Ghost Tunnel, from whence we hacked into the transmitter towers of the Miracle Channel, so we could come to you right across Canada on cable and satellite. We're carried by GNS TV down in Michigan, all over the world on the Genesis Science Network on Roku, and of course on the internets on Rumble and YouTube. The Apostle Paul did not write, "Be ye transformed by the removal of your mind." Rather, we here at Genesis Week believe God gave you an intelligently designed brain for a reason. Remember, if you get lost in cyberspace, you can just punch in wazulu.com or genesisweek.com and you can find us. Or head over to our Rumble channel to get extras like Crevo rants and full interviews with our guests. I'm your host, Ian Juby, joined momentarily by my co-host, Al Vachon. Today is Tuesday, March 19th, 2024, and we are going to pick up where we left off in our pre-recorded show discussing the Ice Age, global warming, and the relationship to deep time and a young Earth. Okay, so let's take that and run with it for a minute, because right now, global warming is like all the rage. Oh no, we're warming up the planet. But of course, that's kind of old news. If you go look back and look at the historical newspaper articles, magazine articles, etc., especially popular press ones where they're just putting it in layman's terms, it's gone everywhere from, oh, the Earth is, mankind is causing global warming, to mankind is causing global cooling. Well, let's just come back to the Ice Age, which is one thing we can all agree on. According to the evolutionists, it was way colder in the past. We had global cooling. That Ice Age ended. That is massive global warming. Was that because of Neanderthal man's factories? Probably not. So it has nothing to do with people. That is global warming on what we would consider a catastrophic scale that had absolutely nothing to do with us, except, of course, for mankind's sin, which is what required the flood, which is what caused the Ice Ages. But I won't go there. Here's one New York Times article. This is only from 1978. And even in 1978, this is one article. International team of specialists finds no end in sight to the 30-year cooling trend in the Northern Hemisphere. And this just happened recently. This is from Rice University. I am not going to attempt to pronounce the Icelandic name for this glacier because I want to prevent injury. And Al, you don't have to either. But this is a glacier that is no more. It's a glacier that melted. And so they made this memorial plaque for the poor glacier. Can you read that, Al? Give it a shot.
Okay, is the first Icelandic glacier to lose its status as a glacier. In the next 200 years, all our glaciers are expected to follow the same path. This monument is to acknowledge that we know what is happening and what needs to be done. Only you know if we did it. August 2019. 415 ppm, CO2, blah, blah, blah. There you go. I sort of did it.
You did. You did a fine job.
I don't know.
Just this, the poor glacier. Think of the polar bears. Aren't you concerned, Al?
I'm very concerned.
Oh,
the polar bears, what will they do?
It's tragic. Oh no, the glaciers are melting. Really? So the glaciers are melting, are they? Huh. You know, if we take a look in historical records in Iceland, and this is from a fantastic series of articles that Peter Klebberg and Michael Ord put together in Creation Research Society Quarterly. So there's the reference there. They called it the Little Ice Age. This is one list of, see all these names, which again, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce any of these lest I injure myself, except Brita. That one I can pronounce, or Brita. I forget how it's pronounced, but they named all these glaciers after the towns and farms that they overran. So in other words, people came into Iceland, Switzerland, Norway, Greenland, France. They built towns, they built farms, they were growing crops. And oh no, here comes this big bad glacier that wipes out the town. It overruns it. Now, a century later, these glaciers are melting back and revealing the towns and farms that they overran. So, question. Is it global warming? Or was it actually past global cooling and the Earth is simply recovering from this mass global cooling in the past? And this has absolutely nothing to do with people. Nothing to do with our fault. Is there anything we can do about it? No. Clearly we can't. And this isn't even going back that far. I mean, look at the dates. 1300, 1600, 1400s. You know, some of these go back as far as, you know, the 1100s. But it was mostly in the 13 to 1600s when most of these towns and farms were overrun by these glaciers triggered by what they now call the Little Ice Age. And not just the massive glaciers, but also ocean levels. So get a load of this. This is in Norway. This, if you can see on the screen there, this entrance here and this ramp, this was for boats. So the ocean levels have gone down so far that their boat launch is no longer usable. And this was from, so this is the west side of the Akershouse Fortress in Oslo. And so this was during the medieval times, and it is now, so the entrance is now 2 meters above what is now sea level. So when they talk about, you know, oh no, global warming is going to melt the glaciers and all the oceans are going to rise up and flood our coasts, news flash, it's just going back to what was normal. So what's the big deal? So anyway, but this does tie in with the Ice Age, so I thought I would bring it up.
The Complete Creation video series is just that, an exhaustive look at the science, philosophy, and theology behind the creation-evolution debate. In this 40-part series, Ian Juby walks you through the debate, starting with the philosophical premises and limitations of science, then the surprising history of evolutionary and deep-time beliefs. You then walk through the evidence for creation from biology, geology, physics, paleontology, and archaeology. Chances are, any questions you have about the creation-evolution debate is answered in this video library. The series is both entertaining and educational, and suitable for personal study or homeschoolers. This 40-part series is available on a 20-disc set in either standard definition DVD or high-definition Blu-ray, and is on sale now. Order your hard copies today online at our store at ianjuby.org.
Mail for me? I do have one clarification I need to make from last week's show, and I might as well bring up a viewer comment as well. Glad Tidings wrote in on Rumble. Fossil tropical plants are all over the Arctic. Mastodons were eating, drinking very cold stuff and breathing cold air until death, so that would have caused them to freeze faster. They were in the atmosphere, which was able to freeze faster than in a confined freezer. Absolutely. We've discussed the copious tropical and temperate plants found in what is now the Arctic, as well as the Antarctic, which gives us really one of two options. Either the polar regions were tropical, or we had a global flood, which transported vegetation from the tropics to the polar regions, and or the polar regions were tropical and we had a global flood. The transport of fauna during a global flood was the point I was trying to make when I brought up fossil dinosaur tracks in the previous episode. Because dinosaur tracks are not going to move very far from where they formed, even with massive continental movement. But I stumbled on my points in the previous episode while I was showing this map of the Arctic, showing the locations of the Greenland ice core boreholes relative to the dramatic fauna that we find in Arctic regions. And when I mentioned that when you use the ages claimed by the evolutionists themselves, that the Greenland ice cores represent some 100,000 years of ice accumulation, that puts glaciers forming in an ice age at lower latitudes in Greenland. At the same time, it was just like the modern day African Serengeti farther north. Now, unfortunately, because I had just been making the point with the dinosaur tracks, I pointed to them, inadvertently implying that according to the evolutionary timescale, the dinosaurs were around at the same time of the ice age that was hitting Greenland. Now, that is not what the evolutionary model would present, as they would assume that the dinosaurs died off tens of millions of years prior. My point with the dinosaur tracks had more to do with past tropical conditions before the ice age, thus reinforcing the argument that global temperature changes, like global warming or global cooling, it has nothing to do with man. And that even if we are experiencing global warming today, it's simply the Earth rebounding to normal temperatures. And it has nothing to do with mankind's carbon load on the environment, which is utter rubbish. Howard F. 5264 wrote in on YouTube, there absolutely is a mechanism for the ice ages, different amounts of solar heat from changes in the Earth's orbit, and it is universally accepted, outside of creationists, that there are multiple ice ages. You neglect the oxygen isotope record that has been found worldwide. Thank you for your comment, Howard. While we're going to disagree on a couple of points, I do wish to say I accept your correction to what I said about the majority view of the evolutionary community when it comes to multiple ice ages. While it is not universally accepted, I believe I stated that the majority view did not accept the multiple ice age models, so my statement was also incorrect. There is a substantial percentage of the evolutionary community which rejects the multiple ice age models. And they give many good reasons for this. Namely, they point out that the evidence for multiple ice ages is, at best, exceedingly weak to literally non-existent. And these are advocates for deep time. And they have argued in print why the alleged mechanisms, such as the Milankovitch cycles, are wholly inadequate to cause or stop ice ages. There are also those such as Young et al., who do advocate for multiple ice ages, but have admitted in print that it is strictly an assumption. Now, you also brought up a significant point for which I thank you, oxygen isotopes in the ice sheets. Now, for the sake of the viewers, oxygen isotopes are different types of oxygen atoms which have different densities. For instance, the oxygen-16 isotope has 8 protons and 8 neutrons, hence the label 16. Oxygen-18 has 2 extra neutrons, and it is labeled oxygen-18. The lighter isotopes evaporate more easily than the heavier ones, and so you wind up with variations in this isotope ratio preserved in the ice. So these variations are claimed to be a reliable data point when it comes to glacial studies and dating of the ice layers. For example, in the original paper on the GISP2, oxygen isotope analysis was one of the 5 techniques used to identify alleged annual ice layers. But remembering that the GISP2 ice core was over 3,000 meters, note what the researchers wrote about isotope techniques. While continuous seasonal isotope sampling remained a viable dating technique in the top 300 meters of the core, the effects of diffusion rapidly obliterated the seasonal signal in deeper ice. Translation: isotope sampling provided accurate dates for only the top 300 meters of ice. Question: how did they know this? How did they know that only the top 300 meters of dates were accurate? Let's flip that coin over for a second. How did they know that the dates returned on all of the other 2,700 meters of ice were invalid? Now, they claimed that the effects of diffusion rapidly obliterated the seasonal signal in deeper ice. But did it though? Now, you can download the isotope data for the entire 3 kilometers of ice samples for yourself. You can drop it into a spreadsheet and make pretty graphs just like I did here. They had all of this data, of which they rejected 89.9% of it out of hand. So while you're looking at the data, notice something odd. In the column for their dates that they assigned to the ice layers, here's the depth of the ice in meters, and here's the age they have assigned to the ice at those depths. So these are years before present. Well, hold up a second. What is going on up here? Why on earth do they have negative numbers for years before present? That's like me asking how old are you, and you respond with, well, I happen to be negative 32 years old. What? What's going on here? Some kind of Back to the Future science stuff? How on earth can you have a negative age? Why do they have the 0 point right about the 19 meters deep mark? Now, we're going to come back to that in just a moment, but just notice that according to their numbers, the first 19 meters of ice represents 37 years, and the next 19 meters represents 53 and a half years. So just in the first 38 meters, they are already skewing and exaggerating their dates. So notice that they are claiming an age of over 161,000 years old for the bottom of the Greenland ice sheet. But yet, they themselves just admitted that they rejected 89.9% of the oxygen isotope ages they calculated. Why did they reject those dates? It's because the oxygen isotope dates were radically different than their assumed ages, which were based on nothing more than deep time assumptions. Come on! Either the dating method works or it doesn't. You can't pick and choose the dates you want all willy-nilly. If they can reject 89.9% of their own dates out of hand simply because it did not line up with their preconceptions of deep time, then I too am also free to reject all of their fictitious dates. Only I'm not going to do it out of hand. I'm going to show you some very good reasons to reject all of it. First, notice that they inadvertently also wind up rejecting all 5 of the dating methods they used. So let's come back to that mysterious year 0 point in the oxygen isotope dataset and look at other isotopes, namely the isotopes from nuclear fallout. With the detonation of the first nuclear bomb in 1945, which led to decades of open-air nuclear detonations from countries all over the world, every single one of those detonations produced radioactive fallout, which drifted all over the world. The Chernobyl nuclear accident also produced a large amount of radioactive fallout, which drifted all over the world in the upper atmosphere and fell on both the south and north poles. That radioactive dust and precipitation was preserved in the ice layers in the Greenland ice sheet. You can actually identify a nuclear bomb or the fallout from a nuclear accident like Chernobyl just by its isotope signature. So, Dibb and Dunphy first documented the radioactive layers in the ice at the South Pole, then went up to the Greenland GISP site and documented the radioactive signatures in the ice core there. So here's the ice depth in meters, and you can see the spikes in radioactivity, right down to about 18.8 meters, which is a long way down. So this survey was conducted in 1992, and they were able to identify the fallout from Chernobyl, right here, about a meter down from the surface, and the fallout from the first nuclear bomb tests in the early 50s. They labeled the 1953 layer at 18.8 meters down. That means ice was accumulating on the ice sheet at a rate of about 0.482 meters per year. But according to the assumed, literally made up ages that Mies et al. Presented in their original GISP paper, the average accumulation rate for the first 300 meters of ice was around 0.265 meters per year. All 5 of the dating methods they used each had their own fatal flaws, and as we saw in their own words, they were quite willing to reject all of their dating methods when it did not serve their purposes. The radioactive fallout signatures are unique in that they can be specifically identified. These ages and these ice layer depths provide way more solid data than any of the other dating methods. And within the first 300 meters of ice, the fallout layers are already showing the GISP team's ages presented in the GIS paper to be in error by 182%. The ages presented in the GISP paper are in error by almost a factor of 2 just in the first 300 meters. But it gets better. Speaking of nuclear bombs, after the last shows aired, a friend of mine, Rick Greenlee, sent me photos and told me stories of his time stationed at the Die 3 Distant Early Warning Radar Base. Now, if you caught our past episodes, you'll remember that when this base was abandoned in 1988, scientists basically took over the site and took several ice core samples there as part of the Greenland ice sheet studies. So notice that the entire station is on a platform that's on stilts. This is because the ice was continually accumulating. The ice sheet was continually growing, and every once in a while they would jack up the platform on the legs to maintain about 30 feet, maintain the platform about 30 feet off the surface of the ice. Notice also the bulldozer underneath, which was used to clear snow out from under the platform as much as possible. One of the reasons the radar bases were abandoned was because the ice sheet growth was significantly faster than they had estimated. In fact, it caused fatal problems for the bases. You can read stories of the workers who were told to pack their things and get off the platform ASAP because it was now considered structurally unsound and could collapse at any moment. All because the ice sheet grew faster than they expected. Now, I did not have time to pursue rights for the photos for showing on TV, but you can look up the sister radar base, the Die 2, and you can see photos taken in 2003. The Die 2 and Die 3 bases were abandoned at the same time, and in 25 years, the bulldozer abandoned underneath the platform had become buried in the ice to the point where only the roof of the cab was sticking up out of the ice. Look it up and see for yourself. The point I wish to leave you with is that the alleged 160,000 year age assigned to the Greenland ice sheet and all of these different dating methods used to arrive at that age is demonstrably false, and even the deep time advocates will reject their own dates and dating methods at the drop of a hat. So, when militant atheists try to claim that the Greenland ice sheets are extremely old and thus refute the Bible, you now know that that is utter rubbish. We have every reason to assume that all 3 kilometers thick of ice could easily accumulate in only a few thousand years, completely in line with the biblical timeline. All right, we're going to pack that in for today. We're going to take a break from production. Please follow us on social media to find out when the next live recordings will take place. In the meantime, remember those words of hope and warning from our Creator, the Lord Jesus Christ, who said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father except through me." God bless.
You can send your comments, questions, hate mail, and letter bombs to us in a number of ways. You can email comments at genesisweek.com, or you can tweet at GenesisWeek. Or leave a comment on CORE's Facebook page at CORE Ottawa. Or leave a comment on the appropriate show available on either the Rumble channel, rumble.com/user/IanJuby, or on the YouTube channel, which you can easily find by going to wazulu.com, that's Ian, and that'll take you straight to the YouTube channel. But just remember, these shows are now recorded live, so you'll want to search out the show under the Live tab. We need your support to keep this program on the air, so please pray for us. And if you wish to financially support the program, Canadians can make a tax-deductible donation via PayPal online at ianjuby.org/donations, or you can mail a check written out to CORE, Canada North, Post Office Box 72075, Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, K2K2P4. And thank you for your support.